I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just pushed the papers forward, one by one, like evidence in court. A calendar of doctor drives, a spreadsheet of nursing home bills, screenshots of unanswered texts that started with, "Can you cover Tuesday?" and ended with, "Please, she fell again." And at the top, highlighted in yellow, total hours my household provided this year. Uncle Ray's eyes flicked down. His grin tried to stay on. Then it failed. Because the numbers didn't lie, and everybody in that room could read. And when my cousin whispered, "Wait, you did all of this?" My uncle's voice turned thin. "Hannah," he said, low and sharp, "why are you doing this here?" I met his stare across the centerpieces and casseroles, and the whole long history of being the responsible one. "Because you only show up when there's an audience," I said. "And I'm done being the stage crew while you take the bows." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about caregiving. It was about the quiet, slow way a family can decide one person's life is the family's emergency fund. And I was done funding it. 6 months earlier, none of this felt like a war. It felt like a duty, like love. My parents were aging fast. Dad, Frank, was stubborn and proud, the kind of man who still wanted to climb a ladder to clean his gutters, even after his doctor warned him about balance issues. Mom, Linda, had always been the family's glue, the woman who remembered every birthday and mailed the cards early, the woman who made soup when anyone sneezed. Then Mom's memory started slipping. It began with small things. She'd call me from the grocery store and ask, "Honey, which aisle is the milk?" Like she'd never been there. Or she'd forget a word mid-sentence and laugh it off. But by the time she put her keys in the freezer and insisted someone must have broken in, we stopped laughing. Dad tried to cover for her. He'd say, "Your mother's just tired." Like fatigue explained why she put salt in the coffee. I live in Columbus, Ohio, in a little house with my husband Evan and our daughter Maddie, who was 8 at the time. We aren't wealthy. We're comfortable if nothing breaks. Evan works IT for a hospital system. I'm a project manager for a logistics company. We have schedules, soccer practice, bills, and the kind of life that runs on routine and quiet planning. When my parents started needing help, I did what daughters like me always do. I absorbed it. At first, it was weekend errands. Then it was, "Can you take Mom to her appointment?" Then it was, "Dad shouldn't drive at night anymore." Then it became me leaving work early, making up hours after Maddie went to bed, answering medical portal messages on my phone in the Target parking lot. Every step felt temporary. Every step became permanent. My brother Caleb lived in Texas and did the classic sibling move, lots of concern, minimal logistics. He'd call and say, "I hate that you're dealing with this," like sympathy was a substitute for showing up. And then there was my dad's younger brother, Ray, and his wife, Darlene, the branch of the family who lived only 30 minutes away, close enough to help, close enough to show up, close enough to conveniently not know what was happening. They were always around when there were photos. Ray would swing by with a bouquet from Kroger the day after a big family event, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and say loudly, "We've been checking in nonstop," while Mom smiled politely and tried to remember his name. But when I texted him on a Tuesday, "Can you take Dad to the cardiologist? I'm in back-to-back meetings," he would respond 3 hours later, "Sorry, can't. Slammed at work." His job? Sales manager at a flooring place. My job? Everything else. At some point, you stop asking, "Why won't they help?" and start asking the more dangerous question, "Why do they feel entitled not to?" The first real escalation happened on a rainy Thursday in March. Mom had a neurology appointment at OSU Wexner, and Dad insisted he'd drive. Evan and I both said no. It ended up being me, again, taking a sick day I couldn't afford to take. The waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer and old carpet. Mom kept adjusting her purse on her lap, her eyes darting to the doors like she was waiting to be called into a test she hadn't studied for. Dad sat beside her, jaw clenched, pretending his foot wasn't tapping. The doctor was gentle, blunt in the way doctors have to be. Mild cognitive impairment, possibly early Alzheimer's, she said. We need to start planning. Medication can slow progression for some patients, but support structures matter. Safety matters. My dad's face went stone still, like he was trying to keep his emotions from spilling in public. Mom smiled in that sweet, frightened way and asked, "Is there homework?" I laughed, and then I cried in my car afterward, hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I called Uncle Ray and said, "We have a diagnosis. We need a plan. Can you come by Sunday? We should all talk." He put on the voice he uses when he wants to sound honorable. "Of course," he said. "We're family. We'll do what we need to do." Sunday came. Ray didn't. He texted 15 minutes after the agreed time. "Running behind, maybe next week." Next week turned into, "Call me." Then, "Sorry, missed you." Then nothing. But at Easter, he was at church, arm around Dad, saying loudly, "We've been supporting them in every way." And my stomach started doing this new thing, this tight twist of rage that felt unfamiliar in family spaces. When Mom's symptoms worsened, the practical realities piled up. We had to handle medication schedules, pill organizers, refills, insurance calls. We had to install extra door locks because she'd wander outside at night looking for the kids, even though we were grown. We had to talk about power of attorney and medical directives, while my parents flinched like we were discussing their funerals. I became the person who knew everything. Mom's last blood work results, Dad's blood pressure, the name of the nurse practitioner, what time the pharmacy closed. My calendar became color-coded chaos. Maddie's school events in purple, work deadlines in blue, Mom's appointments in red. And the cost wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Co-pays, prescriptions, gas, missed work, hiring a home health aide twice a week when Dad needed a break, buying a fall alert bracelet Mom would forget to wear. When I asked Caleb in Texas if he could contribute monthly, he said, "I'm stretched thin right now." Then he posted photos of his new truck. When I asked Ray to take one shift a week, literally just one afternoon, he said, "Darlene and I are dealing with our own stuff." Their own stuff was a kitchen remodel. But the weirdest part? They were still present, just selectively. If a cousin visited, Ray would suddenly appear at my parents' house with a bag of oranges and insist on taking a picture with Mom, smiling like he'd personally carried her through every appointment. And if I wasn't careful, people believed it. Because that's the trick of performative caregiving. It's not about helping. It's about being seen helping. The breaking point came the day the nursing home director looked me in the eye and asked, "Who is financially responsible if we can't get your father's signature?" Dad had fallen in the driveway. Not dramatically, no ambulance, no broken bones, but enough that he couldn't climb stairs safely. Mom tried to help and nearly fell too. The hospital kept Dad overnight for observation. The social worker came in with her clipboard and calm voice. "Your mother can't safely care for him alone," she said. "And she may not be safe alone either. We need to talk about short-term rehab and possibly long-term care." I felt the room tilt. Long-term care is one of those phrases Americans hear like a storm warning, vague but terrifying. Nursing homes are expensive. The system is confusing. Medicaid rules feel like a maze designed to exhaust you before you even start. I called my uncle from the hospital hallway, staring at a vending machine like it had answers. "Ray, we need help," I said. "We're talking rehab or a facility. Dad can't come home like this." He sounded annoyed, not worried, annoyed. "Hannah, I'm in the middle of something," he said. "Can this wait?" "No," I said, and my voice surprised me, steady, flat. "It can't." He sighed like I was a telemarketer. "Look, I'm sure you'll figure it out," he said. "You're good at that stuff." And then, like he was doing me a favor, he added, "Keep me posted." I hung up and felt something inside me go cold. Not grief, not panic. A clean, quiet certainty. This wasn't going to change by asking nicely. That night, while Evan put Maddie to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote, "If they won't help voluntarily, we need structure. Because here's the truth no one tells you until you're living it. Family caregiving is a job, and jobs without boundaries become prisons." So I started doing what I always do under pressure. I organized. I pulled out my Google Calendar and counted every appointment I'd taken them to. I found receipts for pharmacy runs. I searched my texts for "Can you help" messages and noted the responses if there were any. Then I drafted a simple agreement, nothing fancy, just a written caregiving plan, a split of responsibilities between family branches. Hours of care, who does what, when. Transportation, doctor appointments, pharmacy, facility visits. Climax financial contributions, nursing home costs, supplies, co-pays. Disseminate making, who is on POA, who gets notified, how emergencies are handled. It wasn't about punishment, it was about fairness. If Ray and Darlene truly believed in family takes care of family, they shouldn't mind proving it with ink. I emailed it to Caleb, Ray, and Darlene. Subject line, "Care plan for mom and dad, please review." I wrote, "We can't keep operating on assumptions. Please propose edits. Let's sign something simple so everyone shares this load." Caleb replied with a thumbs up emoji and, "We'll look." Ray replied 2 days later, "This feels aggressive." Aggressive. Not the neglect, not the absence, the paperwork. Darlene didn't reply at all, so I tried again, softer, like women are trained to do when men accuse us of being too much. I called Ray and said, "It's just to keep everything clear." He chuckled like I was naive. "Hannah," he said, "family doesn't need contracts. We're not strangers." I almost laughed, because strangers at least understand bills. As weeks passed, my parents moved into a rehab facility. Mom did okay for short bursts, then got confused and cried at night, asking nurses if her mother knew where she was. Dad hated being helped. He kept trying to stand without calling anyone, like pride could hold him up. I visited almost every day. I brought Dad his favorite peppermints. I brought Mom her knitted blanket and framed photos. I attended care meetings with the staff, nodding like I understood medical jargon while my stomach churned. Ray visited twice in 6 weeks. Both times were on Saturdays when other family members happened to be there. He walked in carrying a big bouquet, gave Dad a loud hug, and said, "There's my big brother. We've been praying for you." Then he turned to me and whispered, "You look exhausted. You should take care of yourself." It was like being handed a glass of water while you're drowning. And the cruelest part was how easily everyone else bought it. My cousin Tiffany said, "Ray's been so supportive." My aunt said, He's such a good son. I smiled until my jaw hurt, and then I went home and stared at my ceiling at 2 a.m., feeling like my life had become an endless loop of responsibility and resentment. Evan started doing more, packing lunches, driving Maddie, cooking dinners, but I could see it wearing him down, too. Our conversations became lists. Did you call the insurance company? Did you confirm the facility bill? Do we have milk? Maddie started asking, "Is Grandma going to die?" And I realized I wasn't just carrying my parents. I was dragging my whole household behind me like a sled. The decision came on a Wednesday when my boss pulled me aside after yet another emergency late arrival. "Hannah," she said gently, "your work is excellent, but you've been stretched. Are you okay?" I smiled automatically, the professional woman smile. "I'm fine," I lied. In the bathroom afterward, I stared at my face in the mirror and didn't recognize my eyes. I looked older. Not in years, just in weight. And I thought, if I keep doing this alone, I will lose my job, my marriage, my health. Then what? So I decided I wasn't going to beg my family anymore. I was going to document reality. And then I was going to force a choice. I built the plan properly. A spreadsheet with tabs. T, hours spent, days visited, drives made. Monthly, facility invoices, pharmacy receipts, supplies. Communication, dated requests for help, responses received. Proposed distribution, an even split moving forward. I talked to the facility social worker about family involvement requirements. I called a local elder law attorney for a consultation. I learned more about Medicaid spend-down rules than I ever wanted to know. I set up a shared Google Drive folder labeled Mom, Dad, Care. Then I sent one more email to Ray and Darlene. Subject line, final request, care plan signature needed. I wrote, "This isn't optional anymore. We need commitments in writing. If you don't want to sign, please state what you will contribute, hours or dollars, by Friday." Ray replied within an hour, "Hannah, you're making this ugly. Don't turn your parents' situation into some scoreboard." A scoreboard. Like my exhaustion was a game. So I responded politely, because I still had that reflex. "This isn't ugly. It's reality. Please respond with your contribution." He didn't. Friday passed, and then, by coincidence or fate, my aunt announced she was hosting a big family gathering the following weekend, an early summer get-together with potluck dishes and everyone invited. Ray would be there. An audience, a stage. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't sleep much the night before the gathering. I printed everything twice. One set for the table, one set for myself. I put it in a folder like I was going to a meeting. Evan watched me from the kitchen doorway while I packed the papers into my tote bag. "You sure?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But I'm more terrified of living like this for the next 10 years. He nodded like he understood more than words could capture. Maddie hugged my waist and said, "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" And my chest squeezed, because yes, she deserved pancakes. She deserved a mother who was present, not one who lived inside a crisis. So I kissed her forehead and promised, yes. And I meant it in a deeper way than she could understand. The family gathering was classic Midwest summer. Folding chairs, paper plates, a table full of casseroles, someone's Bluetooth speaker playing soft country in the background. Ray was in his element. He hugged everyone, laughed too loudly, asked questions like he had time. Darlene wore a bright floral top and did that thing where she complimented people with a slight edge, like sweetness with a blade. "Oh, Hannah," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "You look tired. You should take a vacation." My hands gripped the tote strap until my knuckles ached. Ray started telling a story about visiting Mom and Dad. "We stopped by last week," he announced to a circle of relatives. "It's so hard seeing them like that, but we're there for them. We're trying to keep Frank's spirits up." My cousin nodded, sympathetic. "It's amazing you're doing so much." Ray's gaze flicked toward me, quick and warning. I waited until the room was full, until the food had been served, until the casual chatter had settled into the comfortable rhythm of a family that assumed everything was fine. Then I stood up and said, calmly, "Can I have everyone's attention for 2 minutes?" It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. But the way my voice cut through the backyard made heads turn. Ray's face tightened, like he sensed a storm. I smiled, the kind of smile you use when you're about to do something you've rehearsed in your head 100 times. "I want to talk about Mom and Dad," I said. "Because there's been confusion." Ray jumped in fast, loud. "Hannah, not here." And that was it. That was the spark. I looked at him and said, "Actually, yes, here. Because it's been public when it benefits you, so it's going to be public when it's the truth." Then I pulled the folder out. I placed the first page on the table, a timeline of visits. "I've tracked every appointment, visit, and care responsibility since March," I said. "Because we needed a plan, and no one wanted to sign one." Ray's smile strained. "This is ridiculous." I kept going. "This is the cost breakdown for the facility. This is the medication list. These are the hours our household has covered." A murmur moved through the crowd like wind through grass. I heard someone say, "Oh my God." Darlene stepped forward, voice sharp with fake concern. "Hannah, honey, you're emotional. Let's not embarrass anyone." Embarrass anyone. Like embarrassment was worse than abandonment. Ray's voice dropped into something colder, meant only for me, but still audible. "You're seriously going to shame your own family? What is wrong with you?" I turned fully toward him. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. "What's wrong with me is that I've been doing this alone while you collect compliments," I said. "And I'm not doing it anymore." Ray's face reddened. He tried a different angle, the one men use when they're losing control. "Stop acting like you're the only one who cares," he snapped. "You always have to be the martyr." And there it was. The script he wanted the room to believe. I was dramatic. I was difficult. I was overreacting. So I gave the room something stronger than emotion. I gave them receipts. I lifted my phone and read a text I had sent him weeks earlier. "Ray, can you take Dad to physical therapy Tuesday at 2?" I read aloud. "And your response was, 'Can't, busy.'" I read another. "Can you cover a facility visit this weekend so I can take my daughter to her recital?" No response. I didn't look at Ray. I looked at the group. "I'm not asking for applause," I said. "I'm asking for a signed plan. Starting next week, caregiving responsibilities and costs will be shared. Here's the agreement. If you want to propose a different split, we can do it now. But it will be written and it will be honored." Ray's voice rose, panicked now, the mask slipping. "You're not the boss of everyone. You don't get to come in here with paperwork and tell us how to live." His words got harsher, uglier, the way people get when they're cornered by truth. Then he said it, the line that made the whole yard feel like it tilted. Honestly, Hannah, you've become unbearable. If you're going to keep attacking us, then pack up your little folder and leave. You're poisoning this family. Every conversation around us stopped. Not because of me, because of him. Because the room finally heard the venom under the charm. I took a breath and said quietly, "No, I'm not leaving." I stepped closer, close enough that he couldn't pretend this was some loud misunderstanding. "You don't get to throw me out of a problem you created," I said. "You don't get to act devoted for cousins while I miss my kid's life. If you want respect, earn it. Sign the plan or state your contribution out loud right now." Darlene hissed, "Ray, stop. People are watching." And I almost laughed, because that was the point. People were watching. The same people they'd been performing for. Ray looked around and realized the room wasn't on his side anymore. My aunt, Ray's own older sister, picked up the spreadsheet and stared at it like it was written in another language. "Is this accurate?" she asked me, voice shaking. "Yes," I said, "and I can forward everything." Another cousin said, "Why didn't you tell us you weren't helping?" Ray snapped, "We do help!" I didn't argue. I just held up the signature page. "Then sign," I said. He didn't. He couldn't, because a signature would be a promise, and promises are the enemy of performers. The plan didn't magically fix everything, but it changed the power dynamic immediately, because once the truth was out, the Cold War stopped being silent. People started asking Ray questions, uncomfortable questions, real questions. And Ray did what he always did when confronted. He tried to control the narrative. He called me that night, furious. "You blindsided me," he said. "You made me look like a villain." I laughed once, short and humorless. "You did that yourself," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." His voice turned cruel, like he wanted to cut me down to size. "You think you're some hero? You're just obsessed with control. No wonder you're overwhelmed. You can't stop micromanaging." My hands shook, but I didn't let my voice. "This isn't control," I said. "This is survival." He tried another approach, suddenly softer. "Let's talk privately," he said. "We can work it out. No more public drama." I stared at the wall, thinking of all the private conversations I'd tried to have. Calls ignored, texts unanswered, emails labeled aggressive. "No," I said. "We talk in writing, because writing is what you avoid." Then I hung up. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. The next week, my aunt, finally seeing the full scope, offered to help coordinate visits. Caleb, shamed by the family group chat exploding with questions, started sending money monthly. Even Ray, cornered by reputational pressure, agreed to a limited schedule. Every other Saturday, 4 hours, and a set financial contribution toward facility costs. He didn't do it cheerfully. He did it like someone paying a fine. But the difference was, it happened. And I learned something important in that ugly, necessary season. Some people don't respond to pain. They respond to accountability. With the workload redistributed, I could breathe again. I stopped racing from meeting to appointment to grocery store like my life was a relay. I started eating lunch away from my laptop. I went to Maddie's soccer game without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Evan and I had a date night for the first time in ages. Just a cheap dinner and a walk through the neighborhood with iced coffee. The kind of normal that felt like a luxury. Mom stabilized for a while in the facility. Dad regained enough strength to walk with a cane. There were still hard days, confusion, anger, grief that hit like a wave. But I wasn't drowning alone anymore. And Ray? Ray stopped being the family's golden example. Not because I screamed, because I documented. Because once the illusion is dismantled, it's hard to rebuild. He still tried, of course. He'd show up on his Saturdays and talk loudly to nurses like he was leading a mission. But the staff knew who handled the paperwork. They knew who answered calls. They knew who was there on random Tuesdays. Truth has a way of settling into rooms. Not loudly, just permanently. A few months later, on a crisp fall afternoon, Maddie and I visited my parents together. The leaves outside the facility were bright and stubborn, like they refused to go quietly. Mom was in a good mood that day. She held Maddie's hand and told her, for the third time, the story about meeting Dad at a county fair. Dad watched them, eyes glossy, and when Maddie ran down the hall to get a juice box, he reached for my hand. "You've done more than you should have had to," he said, voice rough. I swallowed hard. "I tried, Dad." He squeezed my fingers. "I know." Then he said something that hit me deeper than any of my uncle's insults ever could. "I'm proud of you for making them share it," he said. "I didn't raise you to disappear." I blinked fast. I thought setting boundaries meant I was being cruel, I admitted. Dad shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Cruel is watching someone carry a load and pretending you can't see it." By Thanksgiving, the family dynamic had changed in a way I never expected. Not perfect, just clearer. The old, silent expectation that I would handle everything had cracked. People now asked, "Who's covering this week?" instead of assuming it was me. Ray still avoided direct apologies, but he stopped making speeches. And I didn't need him to say sorry anymore. I needed him to show up. Because accountability isn't a feeling, it's behavior. That Thanksgiving, when Ray started to launch into a familiar family is everything speech, my aunt cut him off gently and said, "We all know Hannah has carried a lot. Let's just be grateful we're working together now." Ray's mouth opened, then closed, and he sat down. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The new life wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with fireworks. It came with something quieter, something I'd forgotten I deserved. Balance. I started waking up earlier to drink coffee in silence before Maddie got up. I joined Evan for short evening walks. I stopped apologizing at work for having boundaries. I learned that no can be a complete sentence, not an explanation. And I promised myself something I wish I'd known from the beginning. Love should not require one person to vanish. Caregiving is an act of love, but it's also labor, and labor deserves support, structure, and respect. If there's a message in all of this, it's simple. Don't let someone else's performance become your prison. Write it down. Make it fair. Make it real. And if they only show up for the spotlight, turn the lights on.